When I was a kid, my mother built a kingdom around my younger sister and handed her the crown. New cars, exotic trips, a condo before she could even legally drink. Everything was lined up for her like the world owed her a soft landing. Me? I learned how to disappear politely. I learned how to smile on cue, while my name slid past like it had never belonged in the conversation. My name is Emma Carter. I am 28 years old. The night my mother finally discovered that I had been quietly building a tech company worth over $15 million, she didn't stand up and cheer. She didn't even look proud. She looked offended. It happened at Christmas dinner. The table was set like always, the same candles, the same dishes, the same seating plan that put my sister next to my mom and me just a little farther away, like emotional overflow seating. My mother had just raised her glass to toast my sister, again, boasting about her journey, her dreams, her bright future. I waited, like I always did, until the applause for Kara faded. Then I put my fork down. I looked directly at my mother, and for the first time in years, I didn't swallow the truth. I said, evenly, that for the past few years I had been running a company, that I bootstrapped it from nothing, that our latest term sheet valued us at $15 million. For a full second, the room froze. No one moved. No one even breathed. Then my mother laughed. Not the warm, amused laugh she used on my sister. A short, sharp laugh that said, "Absolutely not." She called me a liar, out loud, in front of everyone. My sister leaned forward with that look she had perfected since childhood, the one that said, "Do not ruin my moment. Stay small, stay in your place." That was when my aunt reached into her bag. Aunt Linda unfolded a newspaper clipping and slid it across the table. "It's not a lie," she said quietly. "I kept this because I had a feeling you'd need proof before you believed your own daughter." My mother snatched the paper like it had personally insulted her. My sister's face drained of color. Chairs scraped, voices rose. The polished family script started to rip at the seams. If you've ever been the forgotten one in your own house, the one who was always expected to understand, to adjust, to be okay, stay with me, because that night wasn't just a reveal, it was a bill coming due for years of quiet choices. To understand that dinner, you have to see how it started. My sister is Kara, 3 years younger than me. To my mother, Susan, she wasn't just a baby, she was my miracle. Kara was born premature. My mom spent months practically living in a hospital chair, terrified every beep of a machine meant the end. When Kara finally came home, my mother didn't just love her, she orbited her. The rest of us became background scenery in Kara's survival story. I was 5, old enough to notice that the lights had shifted, old enough to learn a dangerous rule: the person who cries the loudest gets saved first. If Kara whimpered, everyone moved. If I cried, I was told I was strong, that I should be grateful, that I had it easier than she did. My father, Mark, didn't fight it. Instead, he started using words like mature as if they were blessings when they were really instructions. Don't need, don't ask, don't complicate things. When I was 11, I begged for a science kit for Christmas. I was obsessed with how small parts came together to make something work. On Christmas morning, Kara tore open an enormous dollhouse, complete with tiny furniture and a minuscule chandelier. My mom squealed, took photos from every angle, narrated every little detail for the camera. I opened a square package and found a book, not a kit, a book about science. Pages, not parts. I told myself it was fine. Then Kara got bored of the dollhouse and decided my book looked interesting. When she reached for it, I tightened my grip. My mother told me to let her have it because sharing is important. I sat on the floor, my hands clenched in my lap, watching my book bend under sticky fingers, while my mom smiled like this was some beautiful sister moment. That was the first time something sharper than sadness lodged itself in my chest. It was the first time I truly understood the rules weren't the same for us, and never would be. By 15, I had stopped asking for anything that cost time, money, or effort. The response was always a version of the same refrain. Kara needs it more. Kara's been stressed. Kara's had a hard week. That year, my mom threw Kara a birthday party that belonged on the cover of a lifestyle magazine. Balloons, catering, a photographer, carefully curated decor. I hovered near the kitchen doorway while strangers praised my mother for being such a devoted, generous parent. When I tried to help, she snapped that I was in the way. My birthday, a few months later, was a quick dinner and a gift card. My mom forgot to invite my best friend and shrugged it off, saying she assumed I wouldn't care. I did care. I just learned not to let it show. And that's the part people never understand. My mother wasn't a cartoon villain. She could be kind. She could sing with me in the car, make me laugh, wrap me in warm hugs before school. But the moment Kara texted, her whole face changed. Her energy, her focus, everything shifted as if someone had flipped a hidden switch. In her head, it made sense. Kara was fragile. Kara was sensitive. Kara needed constant reassurance or she would shatter. I was the sturdy one, the one who could be left alone, the one who could take the hit and keep smiling. She never noticed that being strong at 13 just meant I had learned how to bury feelings so deep they stopped making noise. At 18, when I graduated high school, I thought the tide might finally turn. I had scholarships. I'd won a statewide coding competition. Strangers stood up and clapped for me louder than anyone in my family ever had. For a brief moment, I imagined my parents looking at me and actually seeing me. In the parking lot after the ceremony, my mom pulled me aside. Instead of, "We're proud of you," she asked if I could delay college for a semester. She said Kara had decided to take a gap year and needed help moving into the condo my parents were buying her. She said it casually, like my future was a piece of furniture she could stash in the garage for later. I told her no. It was the first solid no I had ever given my mother. She stared at me like I had committed a crime. Then she sighed and said, "Don't be selfish, Emma." That word burned, as if my time, my dreams, my energy were a family resource she could distribute to whoever cried harder. That night, I opened a notebook and started writing. Not a diary, a record. I listed every time I had been asked to shrink so Kara could spread out. Dates, events, what I was promised, what was taken back, what excuse was given. I wasn't doing it to dwell, I was doing it because I could already feel the story shifting in their mouths. I knew, one day, they'd say it hadn't been that bad, that I was exaggerating, that I was ungrateful. I refused to let my memory be edited. It started as a list, it became a ledger. My dad saw it on my desk once and asked what it was. I said, homework. He accepted that because it was easier than reading the details of everything he'd looked away from. Around that time, I met Jessica in an after-school coding club. We stuck together through graduation. She listened to me, really listened. She believed me without once saying, "I'm sure they don't mean it," or "You should just forgive them, they're family." She said one thing that cracked something open in me. Peace that requires one person to stay quiet isn't peace, it's control with soft edges. My Aunt Linda, my dad's older sister who lived 2 states away and only came around on holidays, saw more than anyone else in that house. When I was 16, after a Christmas party, she caught me in the hallway. She lowered her voice and asked if I was okay. I almost lied. It was instinct. Smile, say yes, keep the script. But she was looking at me like she could see past the smile and into the ledger. She didn't give a big speech. She just said, "If you ever need someone to really hear you, call me." I saved her number and never deleted it. By 20, the pattern wasn't just familiar, it was carved into the foundation. Kara couldn't do wrong unless it hurt herself. I couldn't do right unless it made them look good. But I had two secret lives, the notebook in my drawer and the code on my laptop. I promised myself I would build something so real, so useful, so undeniable that even my mother wouldn't be able to wave it away. Not because I thought it would win her love, but because I wanted one moment where they had to sit inside the truth with no exit. College was the first place I could finally breathe. In labs and classrooms, nobody cared about who my sister was or how my mother bragged. They only cared whether I could solve problems. I studied computer science and product design. Between classes and part-time jobs, I built mini tools, budgeting scripts, scheduling bots, small apps that made annoying tasks easier. I'd sleep 4 hours a night, not out of ambition for some fantasy lifestyle, but because building things was the only time my brain felt quiet. After I graduated, I took a safe job at a tech company. 9 months of steady paycheck, repetitive tasks, and a manager who treated me like an interchangeable part. Eventually, the thought of spending the next decade asking permission to be useful made me feel sick. I quit with roughly $2,000 in my bank account and a wheezing laptop that sounded offended every time I opened more than 3 tabs. Jessica called me insane, then immediately asked how she could help. The idea for my company came straight from my life, a privacy-first finance platform that tracked who paid for what, logged agreements, and made it harder for anyone, partner, parent, sibling, to use money as a leash. I called it Ledger Lane. The name came from that notebook in my drawer, from the knowledge that when people rewrite history, the only weapon you have is your own record. I built the first rough version from a cramped desk in a shared workspace. I pitched it to anyone who'd listen. Investors smiled that polite, patronizing smile, then asked, "Who's backing you?" When I said no one, their smiles cooled. They suggested I find a co-founder with connections. They suggested I pivot to something fun, something easier to market. It was the same old message in new clothes. Not you, not like this, not unless someone more important vouches for you. The first year nearly broke me. My bank account dipped into double digits. I sold my car. I counted coins at the end of the week. I secured a pilot with a small clinic group, then watched their CFO yank the deal at the last second. For a whole weekend, I lay on my back staring at the ceiling, doing the math of failure. I almost called my parents. I almost gave them the satisfaction of seeing me crash exactly where they thought I would. I imagined my mother's voice, syrupy with concern and sweet with victory. "We told you, you should have done something safer." I turned my phone off instead. Pride is not always pretty, but sometimes it's the only rope you've got. My first break came sideways. A local reporter wrote an article about a hacked nonprofit and the mess that followed. I sent her a blunt email explaining how most finance tools ignore the power dynamics inside families and small teams. She called me back. 2 weeks later, she quoted me in a piece about digital trust and hidden financial abuse. It didn't make me famous, but it put my name in front of someone who cared, a seed investor named Ravi. He reached out, grilled me with hard questions, then made an offer big enough to hire one engineer and keep the servers on for a year. I signed the documents with shaking hands and then cried in a bathroom stall because for the first time in my life, someone had looked at my work on its own and said yes without asking for a family reference. We grew carefully. Every feature needed a reason. Every dollar had a job. When revenue stabilized, I hired a real CFO, a woman named Dana, smart and exact, who could read a balance sheet like a crime scene. We went from one pilot client to 10, then 100. Small businesses used Ledger Lane to manage shared expenses and reimbursements. Couples used it to split bills without weaponizing them. Adult siblings used it to track the costs of aging parents without turning every conversation into a fight. It wasn't glamorous, it was quietly life-saving for people stuck in quiet power games. While my company grew, my family script did not change. Kara bounced from dream to dream. Fashion editor one month, lifestyle influencer the next, entrepreneur after that. My parents funded every pivot and called it believing in her potential. When I visited, my mother would ask, "Are you still doing that computer thing?" My father would ask if I had met anyone nice. No one asked what I was building, who it was for, or how far I'd come. Then Kara did something that almost crushed me, and to this day, I don't know if she understood what she was doing. One of Kara's friends worked at a small venture fund. Over brunch, Kara brought me up like I was a childhood anecdote. She told her friend I'd been obsessed with some finance tracking idea forever, the way you talk about someone who used to line up stuffed animals in perfect rows. 2 weeks later, I saw a startup announced in that fund's program with a pitch eerily close to mine. Their screenshots looked like distorted reflections of my mock-ups, same key features, even similar names. My stomach dropped. I confronted Kara, privately. I gave her the benefit of a doubt I should have saved for myself. She shrugged and said she was just talking. Then she smiled, not guilty, not scared, entertained. "You should be flattered," she said. I couldn't afford a lawyer. I couldn't afford a war. So I did the only thing left. I outbuilt them. Dana renegotiated with the clinic group that backed out earlier, this time packaging Ledger Lane specifically for healthcare payroll reimbursement. It was a small niche, but hard to steal. We doubled revenue in 6 months. The copycat startup burned through cash, chased noise, and quietly disappeared. I didn't gloat. I just opened my notebook and wrote down the date and the way my sister had smiled. I underlined it. Because that was the day I accepted she didn't just benefit from the favoritism, she enjoyed it. By the time I was 27, Ledger Lane had leverage, clients, and offers, an acquisition proposal, then another, then a term sheet that put our valuation firmly at $15 million. When Dana slid the paper across my desk, my hands shook, not from greed, but from recognition. I had built something solid and valuable with nobody in my family cheering for me. I thought about keeping it private. I liked the idea of a life they knew nothing about, but there was still this stubborn part of me that wanted a single, undeniable moment. Not to hear, "We're proud of you," but to remove the excuse that they didn't know who I was. So when my mother sent the annual Christmas dinner text, too many exclamation marks, the usual fake warmth, I stared at it for a long time. I imagined arriving. I imagined the usual conversation, Kara's new purchases, Kara's plans. I imagined myself nodding, laughing at the right times, then going home to the life I had actually built. Then I imagined my notebook, the ledger of every time I'd been asked to fold myself down. I replied, "I'll be there," but I added a promise to myself. I would not beg to be seen. I would state the truth, once, clearly, and let them deal with their own reaction. Walking into my parents' house, my body tried to slip back into old rules. Smile first, don't speak too loud, don't ask for more space than your chair. Kara was already there, laughing like the room belonged to her. She had a new designer bag casually at her feet, angled just enough for Instagram. My mom fussed over it like it was a grandchild. When my mother saw me, she gave me the quick, careful hug that says, "I hugged you, technically." My dad looked up from his phone, nodded, and half-smiled. "Wow, Emma, you actually came," Kara said, eyebrows up like I was a ghost that had wandered in by accident. Dinner played out on cue. Kara talked, my mother reacted like a live studio audience. My father tried to keep the mood light. Every one of my sister's stories had a price tag attached, a trip, a car, some project my parents had bankrolled. My mother narrated it all as if it was destiny, as if generosity only ran in one direction. I listened quietly, not because I was small this time, but because I had come with a plan and I wasn't going to waste it on side arguments. When dessert came out, my mother lifted her glass and delivered the same monologue she always did. Family, blessings, how proud she was of her baby girl and her bright road ahead. My dad tacked on a few practiced words. Kara pretended to be embarrassed and still drank in every syllable. That was when I set my fork down. The sound was soft, but the finality was not. "I have some news too," I said. My mother blinked, thrown. Kara's face tightened. My dad actually put his phone down. "For the past few years," I said, "I've been building a company. It's called Ledger Lane. We just hit a $15 million valuation." The silence that followed wasn't respectful. It was confused, irritated, like I'd skipped my turn in the script and broken the show. My mother gave a short, dismissive laugh. "Emma, please, don't start." "I'm not joking," I said quietly. Kara snorted. "That's... wow. Okay, are you serious?" My mother's face hardened. "You expect us to believe that? You never talk about work." I almost smiled at the irony. They never asked, but I kept my face neutral. "Is this some kind of attempt at attention?" Kara asked, her voice low and sharp. My father murmured, "Let's just keep things calm." My mother cut him off and turned on me. There was a shine in her eyes that looked like fear wrapped in anger. "You're lying," she said. "You're trying to humiliate this family on Christmas." Before I could answer, Aunt Linda quietly placed her napkin on the table. She reached into her bag and pulled out the folded newspaper clipping. She slid it across to my mother without breaking eye contact. "I told you," she said. "It's real." My mother's fingers shook as she unfolded it. I watched the color drain from her face when she saw the headline, the photo, the numbers printed clearly under my name. Kara leaned over. "What is that?" she whispered. The room didn't explode into applause. It erupted into denial. "This could be fake," Kara said quickly, almost automatically. "People fake this kind of thing all the time." My mother latched onto that like a lifeline. "Exactly. Why would you bring this, Linda? Why would you participate in this? Emma, how could you do this to your sister?" Even in that moment, it wasn't about whether she'd hurt me. It was about Kara, again. I didn't raise my voice. I didn't beg. I pulled my laptop out of my bag and opened it. Dana had taught me something important. When someone tries to drag you into emotional chaos, stay anchored in facts. Facts don't argue. I turned the screen toward them. "These are audited financials," I said. "Here are contracts. Here are client names you can look up." Kara scoffed. "You could have edited that. Anyone can make a fake dashboard, Emma." I nodded slowly. "You're right. So let's ask someone you can't dismiss." I tapped Dana's contact and put the call on speaker. She answered on the second ring. "Quick question," I said, eyes on my mother. "What's Ledger Lane currently valued at on our term sheet?" $15 million. And Emma, are you at that dinner?" "Yes." "Good. Please remind them you still hold controlling equity. You built this. You own this." I ended the call. My mother stared at the phone like it had stabbed her. My father looked at me like a stranger he suddenly realized he should have known for years. Kara's voice cracked. "Why are you doing this?" "Because I'm tired," I said. My mother snapped. "Tired of what exactly?" "Tired of being the convenient daughter," I replied. "The one you remember when you need help moving furniture or keeping secrets. The one you only praise in public when it reflects well on you. Tired of watching you hand Kara everything and then calling me selfish for asking for decency." "We gave you what you needed," my mother said instantly. "We always did." I exhaled, something close to a laugh, but colder. "You gave me neglect and called it strength. You called my silence peace." Kara leaned in, anger returning. "You're acting like I stole something from you." "You did," I said. "Not money, space, the assumption that I mattered, and you enjoyed it." Kara's sheets shot to her feet. "You're just jealous." "Jealousy is wanting what someone else has," I replied. "I don't want to be you. I want you to stop pretending all of this happened by accident." My mother's voice shook. "Don't make this ugly, Emma." That word, ugly, the family's favorite way of saying, cover the truth, it's showing. I reached into my bag and pulled out my notebook, the ledger I'd been keeping for a decade. I opened it to a marked page and laid it on the table. "This isn't drama. This is a record," I said. I read one entry, the condo at 18, the date, the amount, the exact sentence my mother used about Kara needing stability. I read another, the Tesla, the date, the way my mother told me not to be bitter because your sister deserves nice things. Another, my graduation night, the moment my mother asked me to delay my college plans so I could help Kara move, her exact words about not being selfish. My father's flinched at every line, like each one found its mark. Kara's composure started to crack, not into remorse, but panic. For once, the attention didn't feel like worship, it felt like a mirror. Aunt Linda said quietly, "Susan, listen to her." "I did what any mother would do," my mother insisted, voice rising. "I protected the child who needed me most. Kara needed more from me." "And I needed nothing?" I asked. "That's what you told yourself." Kara's hands were fists now. "So what? What do you want from us? A trophy? A public apology? You want us to bow?" I closed the notebook and slid it back into my bag. "No," I said. "I want something simple. Accountability. And since you clearly understand the language of money when it comes to Kara, I'll say it in those terms." I looked directly at my parents. "None of you will ever have access to what I've built. Not a loan, not a bailout, nothing." My mother inhaled sharply. My father whispered my name. Kara laughed, high and brittle, "As if we'd ask." "You already have," I said. "You just always called it family." Kara straightened. "You think you're above us now because you got lucky with some app?" "It wasn't luck. It was work. The work you never had to do because Mom did it for you." "So now you're my boss?" she snapped. If you want a taste of how the real world treats people without a safety net, Ledger Lane is hiring, I said, calm. "You can apply, but you won't be handed anything. And if you're not qualified, you'll hear the word no the same way I did, without a hug to soften it." The silence that followed felt different, less staged, more raw. My mother's eyes filled, but even then she tried to narrate the story. "You're tearing this family apart," she whispered. I stood up, slow, deliberate. I pushed my chair in. "No," I said. "I've just decided I'm not going to hold it together by myself anymore." My dad finally stood. "Emma, wait." I picked up my coat. I looked at Kara, then at my mother. "This is the last Christmas where I sit at this table and pretend I am less so you can feel like more." I walked toward the hallway. Behind me, I heard my mother's chair slam back, heard her say my name like a warning. I heard my father say it like a plea. I opened the front door. Cold air hit my face. My breath turned white in the dark. Inside, the voices blurred into one loud tangle. I told myself not to turn around. I had done what I came to do. I had told the truth without asking for their approval. The door burst open behind me. "Emma, wait!" I expected my mother or Kara. It was my father. He half ran down the steps, his coat half on, his hair mussed like he'd finally rushed for something that wasn't Kara. He held one hand out like he could pull me back into a story I no longer agreed to perform. I kept walking toward my car. My fingers shook as I dug for my keys. Leaving isn't one clean feeling. It's relief tangled with grief, freedom tangled with a small, stubborn ache. "Please stop," he said. I turned enough to see his face. His eyes were red. He looked older than he had an hour ago. "I'm not here to fight. I'm done." He swallowed, then held out a thick envelope. The edges were soft, like it had been handled too many times. "I should have given you this years ago," he said. I didn't take it right away. Pain often comes in pretty packaging. "Inside are letters," he said. "I wrote them when you were younger, when I started seeing you pull away, when I saw your mom pour everything into Kara and told myself it would balance out later. It didn't, and I kept not doing anything." The front door opened again. Kara stepped out onto the porch, face tight. When she saw the envelope in my father's hand, she hesitated. For once, she didn't rush in. She didn't know what to do with a moment that wasn't built for her. My mother stood in the doorway, one hand over her mouth. She didn't come down. She just watched. I finally took the envelope. It felt strangely heavy. "This doesn't erase what happened," I said. "I know," my father replied. "It's just the truth I should have given you a long time ago. Whether you ever speak to us again or not, you deserved it." I got in my car and drove away. My phone lit up over and over. Mom calling, Kara texting, Dad calling again. I let every call go unanswered. At the first red light, my hands were shaking so hard I had to grip the wheel with both fists. I had wanted them to see me. I got what I wanted. It still hurt. I didn't open the envelope that night. I set it on the kitchen counter and stared at it like it might explode. In the weeks that followed, my mother sent long messages, apologies twisted together with justification. "I was scared. You were always strong. Don't punish your sister." I read them once, then stopped answering. My father came to my office building one afternoon. Security called up to say there was a man downstairs claiming to be my dad. I told them to let him leave without causing a scene. I didn't go down. I couldn't carry his guilt on top of my own healing. 3 months after Christmas, an email arrived in our careers inbox with a familiar name in the subject line, Kara Carter. She had applied to Ledger Lane. No note, no reference, just a glossy resume padded with projects my parents paid for. Dana forwarded it with a single line, "Your call." I stared at the screen, remembering the condo, the Tesla, the brunch where my idea became a party story for someone else's benefit. Then I typed the sentence I'd heard in different forms my entire life. "Thank you for your interest. We have decided to move forward with other candidates." A month later, an invitation came in the mail, Kara's engagement party. Inside, a note in her handwriting. "I'm sorry. I don't expect you to come. I just needed you to know I was wrong." I tore the card in half. Then I stopped, gathered the pieces, and put them in a drawer next to my father's unopened envelope. Some truths I've learned don't need to be rushed. Ledger Lane kept scaling. More clients, more impact. On paper, people called me self-made. In reality, I knew exactly what it had cost. On Christmas Eve at midnight, my phone lit up with my mother's name. The apartment was quiet. The city hummed outside. My company dashboards glowed on my monitor, full of numbers that proved I had won the game they never thought I was playing. I watched the call ring out. I sat there, alone at my table, surrounded by everything I had built, and finally said the thing I had been avoiding. I proved them wrong, but I didn't get them.